Hi, Rima.
Hi, Clark. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, yeah.
Yeah, the afternoon has just started. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Would Masaki be joining in as well?
I don't know. I don't know if she'll be joining for just a quick test.
Okay.
I think I'll probably be doing most of the speaking. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was clear this time before we kick off.
Yes, so do you want to share your, the slide and just check once?
Yep.
Yeah, this works.
Yeah, seems to work. Okay. Yeah, so there isn't really a clear like agenda for this session. It's just a one of those check-in ones. So I'm making it about the upcoming assignment. I think that's probably the best thing to talk about.
Correct. There may be a few questions about the group formation. So we have shared a Google link with them, and in case if required, we can extend it by 1 week because the group assignment is in week 10. We've just opened it early for their convenience. So if required, we can always open it for another week. We
Hmm.
did have a few new joinees in this week, so it'll be helpful.
Right. Okay, that's good to know. Um, that's good. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I'm just going to run through. I put in some case studies and things just to make sure we've got some material, because otherwise it could be like a 5 minute session. Um, and yeah, I think that's really it. I'm sure Masaki will be joining. She's still quite new, so I'll probably do most of the questions and that sort of thing.
Okay, perfect. I think I'll open the webinar say around 5:15 in the next 10 minutes for other participants because currently we're in the practice session only.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to go make some coffee, do that sort of thing,
Sure.
and I'll be back in about
Okay.
10-15.
Yes, thanks, Clark.
Thanks, Rima. Speak soon. Bye.
Bye. Hello, Masaki.
Hi everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening. Delete as applicable wherever you're joining us from. Yeah, I see quite a big range of people from everywhere, including South Africa. Hi Lenora. I'm joining you from London, which is surprisingly sunny today. Are you all okay with the sound and the visuals at the moment? Can you see and hear okay before we get properly started? Excellent. Thank you for confirming. So we're just starting week 3 of the course, and hopefully we've all been off to a good start. I've been in touch with quite a few of you via the discussions and also through direct contact, whether on LinkedIn or email or on Canvas. So hopefully you're all enjoying it and getting up to speed with it, getting used to Canvas and that sort of thing. We will have a few of these check-in webinars along the way. And it's an opportunity for you to ask a few questions of me and of Masaki and the program support team. I think it makes sense when we're having these webinars just to kind of take stock of what we've learned so far and also have a look at what you're doing this week. So it gives us something to frame the discussion around, and you can feel free to ask questions as we're going. Week 3 has just been opened up to everyone. There is an assignment at the end of this week. It's it's for 5 points. It's not a huge one in terms of the grading, but I think it is a very significant one in terms of the capstone assignment that's coming up right at the end of this. I think everything that you do now really builds towards that later stage. So what we're going to do is I have a few slides where I'm just going to show you what's expected during the assignment. I've also got a few case studies. It's just things that I find really interesting in relation to the 5 customer behaviors that we're trying to target. And hopefully, I certainly find them interesting, but hopefully you'll find them a little bit more illuminating in reference to the assignment that you're going to be doing this week. There's a little bit of housekeeping towards the end, just on things like peer feedback. So feel free to ask questions on that. Also see this as an opportunity to ask any questions about the course, just anything that particularly relating to the content that you'd like to know a little bit more about. There's a Q&A box, and I will keep an eye on that, as will Masaki. So we'll hopefully keep up to speed with what's going on there. So I'm going to move across to a screen share and look at a few slides. If you just bear with me one moment. So hopefully you can all see my screen. Of course, let me know if that is not the case, and I can do something about that. But I am apparently, you should be able to see a presentation up there at the moment. So as I said, this is, thanks guys. So this is one of our scheduled check-ins that we'll be having. I'm going to frame this around week 3, assignment 3.1. It's not just about the assignment, obviously. There's quite a bit more to do with the content itself. Don't worry if you haven't looked through this already, but okay, I can zoom in a little bit more. Sorry guys, just bear with me. So hopefully that is a little bit clearer. Thanks for letting me know. So week 3, this is the assignment. Don't worry if you haven't looked at this just yet, but it's all about reaching the digital consumer. As I said, it's probably, I think anyway, one of the most important things for the capstone assignment. And the task is to choose a business unit, product, or an element of your company to probe the question of how do you reach digital customers today? So very conceptual at the start, and then move through the 7 questions that follow. The 5 customer network strategies are, and we'll look at these. You will hear this a lot: access, engage, customize, connect, and collaborate. So those you may have seen in the video with Professor Rogers, he spent a lot of time thinking about this and noticed that there were 5 real ways that brands succeed nowadays, and that they some of them actually do all 5 of these, and some of them maybe just do 1, maybe 2 at most. One thing I would say when you're looking at your assignment this week, think first, so use this as a framework through which you're looking at your audience, but don't allow it to stifle your ideas. What happens, and one of the questions that I get asked quite a lot by participants, and therefore I think it's quite useful to share, is they say, well, I think my strategy touches on access, engage, and customize. Does it have to do just one or two of those things? All of these 5 things blur into each other sometimes. There's obviously a clear amount of crossover between them, but there's still enough to distinguish them as 5 main ways of approaching customers. So first, and I'll use some examples to go through what these mean. So access, yeah, be faster, easier, on demand, ensure that you're available. That affects everything from your search marketing strategy to social media to how you brand. Everything is affected by that notion of access. Engage, so be a source of valued content. You'll probably read a lot about this, that it's, first of all, yeah, you could be entertaining, but also just make sure that you're actually useful to people. It's not just about being entertaining or funny or viral. It's actually about being useful to people on an ongoing basis. So customize, be adaptable to customer needs. We'll see an example of how this functions in the real world. Connect, to become part of customer conversations rather than disrupting. I think we say a lot about disrupting things in this kind of digital business arena, but the one thing we don't want to disrupt is customer conversations or customer journeys. We need to assimilate ourselves into those. So understand what people are doing, what they're looking for, and then fit into that as organically as possible. And the 5th is collaborate. This is an interesting one. It's tricky because collaborate, we're asking customers essentially to help build the brand amongst themselves. That has to have a lot of thought behind it, because it can be quite negative for a brand if they try and use a collaborate strategy, but no one actually wants to get involved. It can be quite bad for their image. So we'll see an example of that as well. So just want to move forward one more. I'll have a look at what you really need to be doing in this assignment. As I said, it's worth 5 points, so it's not worth a huge amount. I think the recommended time to spend on it is about 60 minutes to an hour. You may take longer than that if you want to, but there's no need to do so. In simple terms, what it is you're asked to develop an innovative customer initiative that reaches the digital customer. Choose a business unit, product, or element of your company. Now, it sounds like a very huge task. It's quite a lot in those terms. Look at this as part of your overall learning journey within the Emeritus platform and within Professor Rogers' course. You will have a lot of opportunities to build on this as you move forward. So it's not about getting everything completely right at this stage. Use 1 or 2 of the customer network behaviors: access, engage, customize, connect, or collaborate. A lot of people find sometimes that maybe there are elements of a 3rd part of that, or maybe even a 4th, maybe even a 5th. I wouldn't worry about that too much. Feel free to reach out to me and Masaki if you're a little bit unsure on that. I tend to get a lot of questions on it. But yeah, so actually by customer, yeah, interchangeably, I guess customer and consumer are used. I use them quite interchangeably. They're used interchangeably within this course. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much. Yeah, Frank, so today's webinar is really just a check-in. So what we're doing is running through your upcoming assignment, sharing some case studies on things that might help you think about how you're going to approach it. And really the main purpose of it is to answer any questions you have about the course content. So anything that's unclear so far, feel free to share it with me and Masaki, and we can answer you as we go. So within the template, there's a link within Canvas to download the template for the assignment, and there are 7 questions within it. It's very straightforward the way that it's laid out. Some people like to answer with a PowerPoint. That's a very small minority, though. I think you can just answer within the template itself to make it quite easy. So what aspects of your business have you chosen? If there's one thing I would say about all 7 of these questions, being specific is a very good idea, not just for the person that's grading your assignment, but for yourself to make it as simple as possible to follow. What will your customer objectives be? Now, this is this is one where I think some people who put the time and effort into this tend to benefit from it later on. Really understanding what it is you're trying to do, yes, as a business, but also how you're going to add value for your target customer segment. Who is your target customer? A lot of the answers that come through tend to focus on demographics, and that's helpful. You might know that you're targeting females aged 25 to 34, but I think it's also important to look at their behaviors. So where do they tend to spend their time in the mornings versus the evenings, and how does that shape your strategy? So which customer network behavior will you use? Kind of a simple question in that you just choose one or two of those five, but as I said, conceptually they do overlap a little bit, so it takes a bit of time. And then there's the brainstorm. So what is your digital innovation? I'm going to look at, and I think it's probably helpful to look at some of these case studies today to show that the best ideas aren't always the most complex. I think if you have put the effort into the first section, so you know which part of the business you're focusing on, what your business stands for, what your customers are looking for, the brainstorm section should essentially connect those two in a very logical way. So don't worry about trying to come up with some revolutionary new idea. It's great if you can, but I wouldn't necessarily approach it that way. Try and be as logical as possible and back it up with data if you can. So who will you need to make it happen? This is the nuts and bolts of it. So which departments would you work with? It doesn't require that much detail beyond looking at the different departments you would work with. Would you need an external agency, that sort of thing? And then how will you measure success? This needs some metrics there. So things like increase in customer lifetime value or customer retention or anything like that will score pretty well here. As I say, it's a 5-point exercise, so not a huge one in the grand scheme, but it is quite an important one. And if you get this one right and understand these lessons, it will really help you for the rest of the course. So I'm going to stop briefly and look at some of the questions. We have some questions coming in. So we have a question from Alex Hong. So with regards to the 5 customer network strategies, is there a recommended number of employees that would be required to get this going? I come from an e-commerce environment, brackets, education. I've heard e-commerce strategists comment that they gain more business when they respond to the client quickly and effectively. So I've been writing about this quite a bit recently, actually, Alex, and something that you might want to look at. So there was a stat yesterday, and I said 64% of US consumers have said that they expect instant feedback no matter what size the business is, and that they're willing to pay 21% more on average to get better service for the exact same product. The simple answer on the face of it, and what a lot of people are doing, is engaging in building their own chatbots, and there's a lot more plug and play chatbot software out there at the moment, and that is one way that a lot of people are now tackling this. So they are able to respond quickly and effectively for a low cost without hiring a lot more people. So in theory, I think in the past, yes, there would be a recommended number of employees because you would need different skill sets and you would need a lot of investment. And for smaller businesses, that may not be worthwhile. But it's also worth considering the ways in which technology can augment and extend your team. So I don't think that prohibits any brand from engaging in these 5 strategies, actually. And so Shari asks, should analytics be part of the customer segmentation? Yes, is the definite answer there. That would be my starting point with my background anyway. That would definitely be where I start. Some people start with more qualitative data or with kind of brand-led data, sometimes social media software, but I would start with the analytics package. So to answer that question, yes, would be a definite answer there. Yeah, so VJ asks, can the customer be an internal customer? I mean, if I have to percolate digital thinking for the organization, can I use this? That's a great question. And it's something we'll be looking at throughout the course, actually, because none of the businesses that do these things well do them well without getting that mindset instilled in their staff. That's the starting point for digital transformation. Is, I think I mentioned on a webinar before that I worked on a project that was just about making Lego staff think like Lego customers and understand that. They had a great customer-facing proposition, but they haven't really done that internally. So I think for this task, we're going to be looking at external customers. I like that way of thinking, and it's something that will come in handy later on because that's something we'll look at. But for this one, I would look more at external customers, but it's a great way to start thinking. So a question, can I use some of the same products I used in the social media marketing course, not copy the assignment, of course? Yes, you can. Actually, some people prefer to use the same brand or the same product or the same section of their business the whole way through, and that allows them to build an idea. Other people like to try different things, but yes, yeah, without completely copying the assignment. Yeah, so a question about, can you explain a bit more about the customer network behavior? So we're going to look at some examples that I hope will bring to light what those things mean. I think they are quite conceptual. It does make a bit more sense to look at it in relation to real life examples. Professor Rogers does go through this a lot in the videos that you have this week, and we will come through this quite a few times. But yes, we will absolutely look at that. Hopefully I'll be able to show with the case studies which network behaviors these relate to, and how they all work together. So Alex has asked, so the third assignment is necessarily related to a business we are in, or can we work on a new idea? The assignment would draw a path through, yeah, that's a good question. So basically the question is, can we talk about a different business to our own? I mean, I would say yes. At this stage, if it's possible and makes sense, then a lot more people prefer to look at their own business just because it's what they know. If you want to use another business, that is entirely fine. So yeah, it's a good question, Alex. It's something I meant to mention in that section, but it does say specifically your business. That's mainly because it's what people like to do. If you'd like to look at something else, then by all means, it's not a problem. So Francisco asks, what do you mean by a business unit? Can you elaborate more on that, please? So I'm thinking of, and it really, it depends on how your business works. For example, one of the ones that I've worked with most in the past has been American Express, and they have this, their approach to branding is really what we call a kind of branded house. Everything looks like American Express, whether it's travel, corporate cards, consumer cards, anything like that. But there are business units within the organization. So it might be consumer experience would be one business unit there. So you could just focus on one of those. So the way that they segment it is based on the consumer experience, I suppose. So it's travel, for example, versus corporate cards. Other companies may have different products that sit in different sections of the company. So that's what we mean by that. If it's relevant to your company, then that's something to reference. If it's not relevant, then it's not something to worry about. So if you have different business units, you'll probably already know. So so for the 7 questions listed, how detailed should they be? Yeah, that's one that comes through quite a lot. And at this stage, we're really looking for, a paragraph per question. It's not really about using a whole load of material. I think some people put quite a lot of information in here, and it's helpful for them because it helps them work through their thoughts and it helps them think through things. But it's not necessary at this stage. If I wouldn't worry about trying to cut it down, but also don't extend it just to try and get more information. If you can answer the question in one line, just answer it in one line. It's really not. It's not something that will affect scores or anything like that. So Sunil asks, so for a given objective, there would be several customer segments that we might wish to target. I suppose for this assignment, we take one such segment. Is that okay? Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think something about that is, well, in later assignments, you will look at multiple customer segments together. So it's good to keep that in mind. For this one, I would just look at one, but it's a good point. Later on, you will look at more simultaneously. So I'm going to start working through these slides again, and I'll come back to the questions once we've had a little bit of a look at these. And I really just want to bring to light some real world examples that might help. The reason I've chosen these is more than anything because they are quite current and quite timely. So I don't know if anyone saw this example from the last, that's kind of week, 2 weeks. I'm starting with quite an ambitious one, I will admit, but Nike have been working with Facebook over the last few months, as have 3 other businesses. I know Sephora, the cosmetics brand, are one of those, and there were 2 others, I think a furniture brand and someone else. But what they've been using is their new AR developer kit, and they launched this new sneaker through this app and through this use of AR, and they sold out of the sneakers within 1 hour. And the way that they did that was very clever. So you can see, for example, in this instance, you can use AR, you can look at the sneaker, you can kind of walk up to it and walk around it, which people really enjoy. But the key bit actually is this word unlocked. That's what really got people interested in this and what made them feel like buying the sneaker when they got there. So I've put the text in here. This is from a publication I work with called MarTech Today, you might have heard of. It shows the user flow at the start here. So it's a kind of a messenger bot that uses AI. And sneaker fans had to obtain and line up a sequence of emojis distributed by the social influencers they were working with. Then they communicate with the bot, so it's quite conversational, and they enter the 4 emojis as a code. That works as kind of a knock on the door, kind of like a secret knock or a password at a speakeasy or something like that. And that would open up the camera and you could look at the sneaker somewhere around you. Then, if you wanted, you could actually buy the shoes, which created a sense of exclusivity. It really intrigued people. And once people got through, they felt like buying the shoes a lot more than they would have otherwise. Part of that is because they were able to see it in augmented reality. A lot of it was actually that sense that they had passed the test, that they had got through. So a lot of what we're talking about here with customer networks comes through in this. You have a sense of engaging people. The content itself is very engaging. The idea of access is huge here. So you're getting access to something that other people can't get. That is psychologically always a huge driver for a lot of people. And there's a sense that you're collaborating and customizing the experience yourself. Based on your interactions, you get a different experience every time. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that everyone comes up with their new augmented reality app, but I think this shows a lot of what Professor Rogers talks about in action. We have plenty of those 5 customer networks strategies coming together into one thing here, and the thing is, it's successful. So if Nike's aim was to sell more sneakers, they certainly succeeded. If they wanted to get press, they succeeded in that too. This has been quite well publicized over the last couple of days. So just something to, I guess, get everyone thinking. Second one is quite a famous one, and it was going for a long time. This is a great example of the collaborate strategy, not one that I think we see as often as the other 4, but Doritos for quite a long time asked customers to come up with their own Super Bowl ad, and there was $1 million prize behind this. So really, for about 15 years, Doritos didn't need to make their own ad. They had thousands of people making videos, sending them in, and then of course they get shared over social media. Everyone can communicate with each other, even work together on Doritos ads, and it's great publicity for them. These 3 were the finalists. I hope the dog one won. I'm not actually sure which one in 2016, which this screenshot was taken from. But as you can see, it's a good way to put it out to their network, get people working on something together. But there's an incentive, and think about that. So if you're planning to use a collaborate strategy for your brand, just think about why people would do it. Beyond the kind of simple narcissism of wanting to get your name out there, why would you want to collaborate on something? So Doritos, I think, is still my favorite example of that. Maybe it's just because I love dogs, but yeah, that one worked particularly well for them. Another one, and this is a collaborate one as well, but it's really a good customized strategy. And it's come from Lego, our old friends. They're always good for an example when we're doing these things. They've always done something really interesting. And they held a competition. And I guess the incentive was quite clear. It was for kind of parents and children to work together and come up with a new concept for a Lego toy. And if yours is selected, then they'll make it in production and sell it. Hopefully they got a cut of the profits, but yeah, I'm not sure they did. And this was the one that won most recently. So the Lego Observatory. And someone just created a concept, shared it with Lego, and then you can get people to vote amongst themselves on which ones they like. So it's that sense of access, giving people a chance to customize the brand themselves, and it makes them feel really involved and really connected to it. So that once this product goes on sale, there's a much better chance that it will sell. So again, we see what the approach is, we see what they're tapping into, but also how it ties back to business value. It's not just about doing something to create a bit of a stir. This is good for the business. It gets them a new product, diversifies the range, and it sells more. So another really good example of how people can collaborate, but also feel incentivized to do so. This example, I really find Manchester City. I'm not a Manchester City fan, I should say, up front. That's not my reason for putting them in here. Yeah, I'm definitely not, in fact. But they're hugely impressive from a brand and social media point of view. We can start with their kind of club badge, which came about by asking their fans to design their new badge. They then narrowed that down to 5 different versions, and it went out to their social media following, and everyone could vote on their favorite. So there's a sense of attachment there to the club emblem, which is a good way to do it. That's one thing that a lot of brands do. It can go wrong, so they had to make sure that rival fans couldn't access it. So you had to be like a club member and a paying member to be involved, which has its own complexities. But they completely redesigned their website, and now it has a very kind of bespoke feel to it. So everyone sees a different experience based on their preferences and based on where they click and what they do on the website. So really, it's really, really important this with something like a sports organization, where really it's just a corporation. There's not that much more to it. The sense of community has been lost in this capitalist age. So how does a club like Manchester City do it? And they've done it by engaging people and making sure that they feel like it's customized, a customized experience for everyone. So it adapts to the match cycles. This is their CEO speaking, makes it easier to discover trending or related content, and it contains a fresh and modern design. And it has served them incredibly well. So not an obvious example, and hopefully one that's quite helpful when you're thinking about these things. A football club doesn't normally do these things, but it has worked well for them. Again, not a Manchester City fan. I'm not promoting them on purpose. And yeah, I have one more, and then I'll pause for a few questions again. I really like this example, and I got this example from the CEO of a brand strategy agency in New York, who I know quite well, and who actually he teaches alongside Professor Rogers quite a few times, and he loves what GoPro have done with their branding, because they essentially get the customer to brand for them. And the way that they do that is, and the example he gave was, he has quite a nice life. So he says, I go surfing in the morning, and by the time I go to get my cup of coffee, GoPro has automatically created a story out of my surfing. So it's showing me all the best pictures that I took all together, and it makes it very easy for me to share that via quick stories. Everything has the GoPro company watermark on it, so I share it. People look at it and think, wow, these are great pictures, but they're also seeing the GoPro logo everywhere that picture goes. If I were looking at that and I was quite impressed by it, I can't do the same thing without buying a GoPro camera. So they've created the product, they've created something that people like. It uses technology in a very smart way, but it creates a sense of exclusivity and customization. So I can't make those pictures unless I buy a GoPro camera, so it helps them to sell more. So that, I think this is a really, there's more to this example than it appears at first glance. And I think it's a really helpful one when we approach this idea of customer networks and how they work. The way that this GoPro camera really succeeds, from a branding perspective at least, is that network, which is essential, that network of customers, duplicates itself time and time again. The network grows stronger and faster over time because more and more people want in. It's the best camera on the market. It does all of these things for you. And by the way, you need to buy one or else you can't join the group. So it's putting great technology into the hands of consumers and essentially allowing them to do the branding on the company's behalf. creating an air of exclusivity, which draws in more people who then, of course, go on to brand GoPro again, and again. So how relevant, the camera section is, well, maybe it would have been relevant for the social media simulation, but for this example, will depend on the business that you're looking at. But I think conceptually, it's a really helpful way of thinking about modern branding. It's not really just about kind of those push mechanisms. It's about pulling people in as well. So those are some of the ones that I tend to think of when I go through. I'm sure you can think of plenty of examples of your own. I'm just going to pause briefly and look at some of the questions we've got. So yeah, we have a few questions, I think, about are the big differences between B2B and B2C. I think there were 2 or 3 related to that. And yeah, we should probably answer that one on like an FAQ kind of section, because it does come up quite frequently and with good reason. I think the most important point to bear in mind when we think about that is what we're really talking about is human psychology and how we relate to other people, how we use our brand to create a connection or add value to them or answer a question for them. So at the very highest level, from a strategic point of view, there aren't big differences, but in the application of the strategy, there will definitely be differences there. The motivations behind a B2B purchase will be different. The purchase cycle will be very different. The journey time, the people involved in the decision will be very different. So one thing that I do quite often working with B2B companies is not just think about how do I engage someone who is, say, searching for something, or they're on their mobile device, how do I target them? It's how do I put into their hands the information they need to influence other people to make the decision that I want them to. So I think the 5 frameworks that we look at are equally valid for B2B as they are for B2C, but the application of them will differ. So the customer segments will be different, the purchase journey will be different, and what that means for what you have to do to get to the result you want will be different. So it's worth reaching out to us as you work through if there's something that isn't quite clear, using this as a B2B example. We focus a little bit more on B2C, I think, because the examples are quite clear and with a little bit more of the experience there. But yeah, feel free to reach out though if some of that is unclear. So Bob asked, I'm in the servicing business. Can I use projects that we've been working in for clients instead of our own business or company? Yes, you can. If you think that that's going to provide a more kind of illuminating example and it's going to be more helpful for you, then that is completely fine. So Frank asks, concerning reach of the customer, are we talking at the stage of awareness in the marketing funnel or concept that is touching every part of the marketing funnel? So Professor Rogers talks about this in the videos for this week, which will kind of show that it touches on every stage. We start sometimes, I think, from the awareness stage just for kind of chronological reasons. It makes sense, I suppose, to look at that. If your business is performing well in that area, but you are struggling with conversion or the consideration phase, you lose a lot of customers, feel free to focus your assignment on that. We look at where most people are probably starting this from, and that's where we shape the material, but feel free to look at something else because these are equally applicable at each stage, and you'll hopefully see that in the videos this week, but if not, feel free to reach out. So Raphael asked, you mentioned the relation of this assignment with the capstone project. Could you elaborate more on that, please? So yeah, the capstone project is really going to bring together everything that you're learning during this 9-month course. The reason I think this one is really helpful is because you're looking at how to connect with customers, what your value proposition might be, and all of the things that you do in this assignment will be elaborated on further. This is kind of, I hope anyway, that you'll do the assignment, and then when you've done all of the other sections, you'll look back and think, I know ways I could have made that better. I could have improved on it in a few different areas based on what I now know about digital business transformation or whatever section it is. So this one relates to the capstone project because it's about understanding consumers and how your business can add value for them, which is one of the kind of essential lessons to take away from all of this. So, so Tej asked, within one customer segment, you mentioned American Express, we will have multiple business units. So can I choose a business unit within that customer, like personal loans within banking? Yeah, absolutely. If that helps to make the assignment a bit clearer, then absolutely. There's no problem doing that whatsoever. Yeah, Jimena, that's a really poignant question, I think. So what will be the final goal of the assignment, more than answering the questions that we should be looking for? The example we build should be to illustrate how to create digital engagement with consumers. That's probably, and we'll be looking at this in the next section here, that's probably my main point with this actually, and it's the same with every assignment, so I'm glad you brought it up. It's not just about going through and answering 7 questions. We do that to help you structure your thinking, but we don't do it so that you go through and just answer 7 questions and then we give you 5 points. The point of all of this is to be starting to think, and actually I think mainly about the way that you can join your brand with a consumer need. So understanding what the demand landscape is, what are people looking for, what does your brand currently do, what's the gap between both of those, and the new innovation that you are thinking about, and you should only be considering it at this stage. It doesn't have to be a fully fledged idea. It should be something that quite logically links those two things. What do you know that people in your audience are looking for, or maybe they don't know they're looking for it yet, but their behavior suggests that this would be helpful. And how does that relate to your brand? Is it a logical thing for you to do, or would you need to launch a new business unit actually to manage this project? So we're actually looking for, and it's perhaps not so much the case with this assignment, but certainly throughout the course, is cohesive thinking across all 7 of those questions. They should logically follow each other. It should be clear that they're all part of the same strategy. So yeah, thanks for that question, Jimena. It's definitely something that we would like to elaborate on. So we have a question in point number 3. What do you mean with who is your target customer? Really, yeah, it's a deceptively simple question, because it could be your current audience. So what do you know about people who currently use your brand, or if you're B2B, who do you currently deal with? But also, who would you like to shop with your brand? What is their online behavior like? Do they tend to use LinkedIn during the day, but they shop on Facebook at night? Those sorts of things we'd like to see coming through. Are they habitually mobile device users? And all of this should start building up a bit of a profile about who you're talking to. Some of those can be built into little segments, but I think it is deceptively simple, because the target customer could be your current customer as it stands. So what do you know about them, their age, their income, anything like that? Do they have families? And also, who is your aspirational audience, and where would you like to move the business towards? So hopefully that becomes a little bit clearer as we move through, but feel free to ask more questions if you do have any. Yeah, so Alex asked about the peer feedback. I'm going to look at that in a moment, but the question is, is criteria just related to giving three feedbacks, or does it matter the quality of the feedback? We will be looking at them, of course, so we will be hoping to see high quality feedback between people. If it's quite straightforward and quite simple, then you will still be awarded the points. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about that. But the point is that you should be thinking about why they've put together these answers, and if you want to give detailed feedback, that will obviously be a good thing, and it'll be much appreciated by your fellow participants. So I will look at that in a moment though, Alex, so we will get to that. Yeah, so Raphael asks about naturally there are lots of B2C digital strategies. Could you share some examples of B2B digital strategies? Yeah, so I will put some of those examples at the end of this presentation. We will be sharing this with everyone after the session. So I'll share some B2B ones as well as B2C, because it's a good point. A lot of people are coming from a B2B background. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Raphael. And yes, Amar asked, can I use an idea that I already implemented, like as a success story? If it's something that's already done and you're just using it in a kind of black and white way, kind of reporting on what happened, then I would say probably it it would be best to do something else, something new. If you're looking at something that you've already done but that you could improve based on what you're learning, then I would certainly welcome that. But yeah, the point is to be thinking things through and arriving at hopefully different and better conclusions. So it depends. If it's something you think you can improve based on what you've learned, then by all means. If it's kind of just reporting the facts, then it might be more helpful to look at it as something new. And yeah, a great question. Final one, and I'll move into the nuts and bolts of the assignment. So the question is, I'm in the digital mobile wallet business, which is evolving and highly dynamic. Do you want us to do the project from the customer perspective or the organization perspective? Again, it's a much more complex question than it seems. And the answer is kind of both, but it should ultimately, the resolution should be from the organization's perspective. But I would kind of start from the customer's perspective and think about what they are looking for, how they perceive the brand, whether they shop with rival companies for some reason or another. The best way to do these things, and I think a lot of people in branding would certainly agree, it's the prevailing mode of thought, is to begin with that external demand and then look at your supply and where the gaps are between the two. If you begin from the organization's perspective and you look at everything through that lens, I think things will be quite jaundiced. You will shape everything based on what you do, because that's how you want to view the world. So I would start from the customer's perspective and then look at the business and how the two match up. But it's a great question, and that's actually one of the big questions that kind of frames this whole course, actually. And it's not one with an easy answer, but it's a very interesting one. And well, one final question from Jimena. How does this approach change if your product is based on impulse versus being the main reason of the visit, or is engagement independent of the reason to purchase? Impulse purchases are quite interesting psychologically. So the way that you would be thinking about that would change completely, I think, actually. So if it's something impulse focused, you need to understand how to make that very quick connection and how to make that a seamless interaction. So a great example of that is, and you'll probably notice this, charities, for example. If I were to search for donating to a charity, they make it very easy to donate with one click, because a lot of people do on impulse will just donate to something like that. It's not the classic impulse purchase. There's a lot more in supermarkets and that sort of thing. But a lot of people think about the charity example, because the thing for them is, yeah, you want to know a bit more about the company and what they do, where your money's going to go. But when it comes to making the transaction, it should just be one click, because the kind of we call it like that micro moment, or that window of opportunity for the brand to shape a decision. For an impulse brand, that is a very small window. So you need to think about it from that perspective. How can we ensure that we're there at just the right moment and that we make things as simple as possible? A more considered journey gives you a much bigger window of opportunity. So yes, the framework is still the same, but the way that you apply it should be different, because that little window of opportunity does decrease. So I'm going to look at some of the, as I said, the kind of housekeeping behind assignment 3.1. Now, you will have quite a few questions about this. There are always quite a few questions about this. It's quite early on in the course. I'm going to go through some of this. That's all available to you in Canvas. Feel free to reach out to us and to the program support team with a lot of the questions that go into the granular details with this. But these are the main points to take away. So it's a peer feedback assignment. We've already had a question from Alex about this as well. There's a lot of detail in there on how you go about doing this. The peer learning circle and the peer feedback will only open to you once you've submitted your assignment itself. So the due date is Monday, the 4th of June at 4:29 p.m. UTC. As we've mentioned before, and I've had a few people do this so far, if you're having any difficulties meeting that deadline, please just let us know. Reach out to me, to Misaki, or to both, and we'll try and help you out if for other reasons you're struggling a little bit with that. So the last day to assign yourself to a peer learning circle is the 28th of May. That will be locked after that. So Jonathan asked, can we join a peer learning circle that is outside your time zone? Yes, if you are struggling to do that, let us know. That a lot of people prefer to do it in their time zone for, you know, the obvious reasons, but it's not a prerequisite of joining. So you should be able to do so. If you're having any trouble though, Jonathan, please let us know. So as I said, this is all in Canvas there for you. Peer feedback itself. So you submit your assignment based on the 7 points that we've been looking at today. Then you will need to give feedback to 3 peers over the following week. You will receive feedback, so rather than grades or points, from 3 of your peers on this assignment. There's a peer feedback assignment page within, I think, yeah, so I put the clickable link in here, so you should be able to go through from this document when it's shared with you as well. But you know, it's pretty straightforward. I'm sure quite a lot of you have used something like this before. It's, you know, quite a widely used approach. So it gives feedback to 3 peers. Like we said, there are some guidelines on this sort of thing, and you know, people won't be penalized for not going into lots of detail. But I think it's important to kind of consider it, and also think about it from your fellow participants' point of view. You know, what can you tell them that's constructive or that encourages them? If you see something that you're really impressed by, let them know. So some notes, and as I said, yeah, it's not the most exciting part of this, but it is important. So you can review your peer's assignment when you submit your own. As I said, peer review is to share feedback only rather than grades. You must complete the peer review by 4th of June. As I said, if you are struggling with that, let us know, and you'll get 5 points for completing those peer reviews. So it is definitely worth doing for a lot of reasons. And you don't need to submit that as an assignment. That will be updated by the Emeritus team. As you're working through it, yeah, this is quite important. Sort of comes back to Alex's question around you know, the quality of the feedback that you give. So I think, does the submission use one of the customer behaviors to reach the digital consumers effectively? Is it innovative? Now, I think a word like innovative is quite loaded, and it raises our standards and what we expect of other people. I think also, you know, we are quite early on in this process. It's quite a short assignment, this one. So Sanjay asked, sorry if I'm asking a repeat question, but what's the number of peer reviews expected? Yeah, so you must do 3. Once you do 3, you're complete. So I think, yeah, something like innovative, it can be quite easy to almost criticize and say, oh, I've seen this before. It's much better to be come from an encouraging standpoint when we're doing this as part of the peer review. When we're looking at whether it uses one of the customer behaviors, sometimes you will see kind of a misinterpretation of one of the customer behaviors, in which case it's great to let the other person know, now this is labeled as an access strategy, but actually I think it fits more in the engage category. That can be quite helpful because, as I said, these things do bleed into each other a little bit, so we need to keep those lines firm if we can. And what did you like about the assignment? What didn't you understand? What suggestions do you have for improving it? It's a good way to start seeing what your fellow participants are producing in assignments as much as anything else. And yeah, it gives you an idea of how people are approaching things, how they're thinking, where they're struggling. And yeah, we're all in it to kind of help each other improve. It's only week 3. So going to come back and look at a few questions. As I said, all of this stuff is in Canvas for you. And if you have questions about the content, contact me and Masaki. If you have questions around peer learning circles and that sort of thing, and come to us and also to program support. And that is pretty much it for assignment 3.1. So yeah, in a nutshell, a question. So 3.1 is answer the 7 questions and do the peer review. So it's, yes, go through and answer the 7 questions in the template and complete 3 peer reviews. And then you've done your bit. And then from there, we'll provide the grades and the scores. And then it's, oh, yeah, it's a good question. One we were kind of looking at, which is in which format do you want us to submit the project, PowerPoint or Word or any other format you suggest? It's a great question because later on there is a lot more freedom in this, and some people prefer PowerPoint and more visual approaches. Some people like a Word document. For this one, I would say the way that I would certainly approach it is just to use the Word template that we've provided, rather than trying to unless it really helps your thinking, to do it in PowerPoint. But there's no need at this stage. But it's good to be thinking about that, because later on it's more open-ended. But there's a Word document that we provide, and that's more than sufficient. So yeah, just looking through any remaining questions that we have. And feel free to just drop these in. I'm looking in the Q&A at the moment. We've still got a few minutes. So if there's anything about the assignment or about the course that you're unsure of at the moment, please just drop it in there. And of course, you can reach out to us, as fortunately many of you have done already, via Canvas, LinkedIn, and so on. Yeah, so the question I missed there from Alex, the idea of customers co-creating products or services is always a great, empowering idea, but in reality it does create IP, so intellectual property issues and other contentious issues. So yeah, it's a really great point, and I think some consumers have been kind of ripped off in the past. A lot of brands essentially use it to crowdsource ideas and then take them, and that is not going to be tolerated for too much longer, I don't think. Some people are happy because they love the brand and they love seeing their idea out there. What we need to be thinking about, and it's great that you ask that, because I would like to see this in the assignments. If you're getting customers to co-create it, how are you going to go around that? Does the customer take commission from sales? Something like that I think would probably be fair, but is that going to eat into your profit margins and make it less sensible to do? Yeah, it's a difficult one for brands to manage, actually, and it's why companies like Doritos give $1 million prize at the end of theirs, because otherwise, a lot of people would quite quickly say they're just stealing our ideas, which can be really negative. And coming back to the idea of the network, anyone can take to Twitter and just say what they're thinking, and everyone can read it. So definitely one to be considering there. So thanks for asking that question, Alex. That's a very good one. So yeah, Lenora asked, so can we use an advanced business to enterprise buyer journey with a very technical business unit? Yes, absolutely. It doesn't really make any difference to the grading or anything like that, whether your assignment is very specific and very technical. It's great to provide a bit of context on some of these things for whoever is grading it, but if that's what the line that you work in, then I would definitely go ahead with that. So there's no issues with that. And Garth asked, is it okay to use a potential new business unit rather than our core business services? And again, the answer is yes. And I think where that creates challenges is in thinking it through from that organizational perspective. So when you get to the question that asks, well, what would be needed to make this come to life? That question becomes very complex if you're starting a new business unit. So who would you need to kind of start that up? How would you sell it in? How would you get people on board with it? But absolutely, I think we've seen that quite a lot in the past, where people say, our company produces one type of product, but there's a demand for us to change, and we would have to launch a new business unit to do it. There's no issue with that. So yeah, I think just it's that bit of just thinking it through that's really important there. So do we have any further questions? I said there's still a couple of minutes left. If you've no questions to ask at the moment, then please feel free to reach out anytime. We're always available. Canvas is normally the best place to get us. As I said, we'll hold these sessions every so often, and the aim is just to give you an open forum to ask questions. And so Jason has a question. Will we be covering competition? So where two similar digital initiatives have similar strategies, how could one win the competition, I suppose? Competition is a big part of the upcoming weeks, actually. So yeah, it's a great one to ask. Actually, we look as well at how brands work together sometimes in those situations where they feel like they can't beat the competition, so they join together to beat out a bigger competitor. So yes, that is definitely something that we will be looking at. We aren't necessarily quite there just yet, but we will. So don't worry about that, Jason. We will get there. Yeah, I was asked if there's a kind of leaderboard for the grades and things. No, we won't be sharing anything like like that. It's not really how we think about things. So we won't be thinking about it, but there are elements that we're looking at for doing something like that with some of the interactive simulations and that sort of thing. So not for the overall class, at least not until the end. But yeah, it's a good question that we did get asked that a few times. So yeah, and one final question, and then we'll wrap things up. There's the survey there, so you can give your feedback in there, please, if you can take just 2 moments. And yeah, so the question is, for this assignment, could we choose a family business and assess using the customer network strategy and answer the 7 questions? Would that be fine? Yeah, I mean, that would be absolutely fine. I think consider it in the broader context of the course and what you're aiming to do from here right up to the capstone assignment. So yeah, I mean, if that's the direction that you're going in with things and that's relevant to what you do in your line of work, then absolutely, you can use any business for this. But I would just think about it longer term. So you could do that and get, your 5 points. Make sure it's just helping you really understand those things, because the assignments get a little bit more complex and a bit more demanding as we move forward. So yeah, absolutely. But just make sure it's relevant to what you do and where you want to go with this course and what you want to learn. But in essence, yeah, you could use essentially any business. That's kind of the point. We're hopefully teaching you tools and frameworks that can be applied anywhere. So thank you for the question. So as I said, there's a survey open. If anyone wants to take the time, we would really appreciate it. As I say, these are just kind of open-ended sessions that we try and hold every so often. Hopefully you've got what you wanted out of it, but let us know if not. You can always reach me and Misaki at any time if you have any further questions. And thank you all for joining. It's been really good, a lot of great questions. So thank you for your participation. We'll follow up with the presentation. I'll add those B2B examples as per your request. And I'm sure I will speak to you all soon. Have a great rest of the day. Take care.